Hello and welcome to Talk Truth. My name is Corey Huntsberger. I've got my father, Alan Huntsberger, in the studio. We're going to start off with our foundational verse. The earth and everything in it, the world and its inhabitants belong to the Lord. For he laid its foundation on the seas and established it on the rivers. Psalm 24, 1 and 2. Powerful verse. And as we continue to use it every single day for the last, I don't know how many years it's been now, Dad, that verse has more power than ever, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it's very, very powerful. And I think sometimes we lose sight of just exactly how powerful that actually is. You know, think about it. Psalms 24 tells us that God owns everything. And Ephesians 1 tells us that he wanted us. He wanted you, not as an afterthought, not as a reaction to sin, but by design. You were chosen before you ever failed. Think about that. And that's where God is. Before you ever succeeded, before you ever made a decision for or against God, that truth changes everything. It means your value does not come from what you do. It comes from who chose you.
When it comes to your health, choice and freedom matter. That's why this episode is brought to you by Freedom Health. They focus on wellness without the pressure and the hype. Visit freedomhealth.is and use our promo code TRUTH15 to receive $15 off your order today. Well, someone who has chosen to create a documentary on his friend Michael's life was this guy right here. We got Dean Rainey from Rainey Media. Dean, welcome to the show. For those that do not know who Dean is, you got to go back and watch part 1, part 2 of this documentary we're going through. This is part 3. Dean, welcome to the show. Glad you're here. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate this.
So part 3, or what you would say is like Act 2 of this documentary, near the end. We're coming near the end of Act 2. What are we going to see here specifically in this film that we're going to watch?
Yes. So this is the largest chunk of the 4 chunks that we have that we're showing here. And we get to follow Michael deeper into the medical system and still with, very little solutions, no acknowledgement whatsoever. And then we meet some other people in Canada here that have also been injured by the vaccine. So we expand the story out to include them as well.
Yeah, let's watch part 3 of this documentary. Why can't we talk about this? I think that's a great title, Dean. Watch this.
The spike protein that's inside of me, maybe inside of me, I don't know, we can't measure for it, comes from the vaccine. And in a lot of cases, they are more intense, more strong. And we don't know what their potency is. There's a belief that they can start multiplying. They can start actually producing and reproducing their own DNA. I talked to a doctor, Dr. Speecher, and he's a virologist who was fired from McMaster for his beliefs and what he was saying. And he's saying that, if it's the case where your spike protein is now reproducing its own DNA, you don't got a chance. That eventually it's going to kill you.
Okay, bear with me for a moment because this is going to get technical. In the summer of 2023, Dr. David Speaker was asked to confirm the findings of genome researcher Kevin McKernan regarding foreign plasmid DNA found in the mRNA vaccines. To do this, Dr. Speaker studied 44 vials of the COVID vaccine and found high levels of plasmid DNA in both Pfizer and Moderna vaccines. This synthetic residual DNA is found in high levels as a leftover of how these vaccines were made.
They know there is DNA in the vaccines. Moderna's patent shows it. It is left over from the manufacturing process. It should have been removed, and it wasn't.
So what's the big deal? Health Canada's guideline is 10 nanograms of plasmid DNA per dose. The problem is, these guidelines are for vaccines with short pieces of naked DNA, and not for vaccines with DNA in a lipid nanoparticle.
FDA guidelines state a maximum of 200 base pair length of the DNA. We have found an average size of 214 base pairs. The largest we have found is 3,500 base pairs. It is much bigger than what should have been there.
In the House of Commons, Health Canada said on record to MP Colin Carey that this residual plasmid DNA is no big deal.
At the same time, Health Canada emailed Pfizer and asked for the size of the fragments and justification for the SV40 regulatory elements in the plasmid.
SV40 stands for simian virus 40, a polyoma virus that is found in both monkeys and humans. Like other polyoma viruses, SV40 is a DNA virus that is found to cause tumors in humans and animals, but most often persists as a latent infection. And while the full SV40 virus has not been found in the vaccines, there are SV40 promoter and enhancer nuclear localization sequences. And this is important because we know from Dr. David A. Dean's research at the University of Rochester in 1999 that if you take a DNA fragment attached to an SV40 enhancer and inject those into a cell, such as through a lipid nanoparticle and a non-dividing cell which contains an intact nuclear envelope, these DNA pieces will enter the nucleus and integrate into the genome of that cell.
It's known that injecting SV40 promoter sequences into a cell has oncogenic potential. It can knock out the cell's P53, the guardian of the genome, and make the cell cancerous.
Could this be what's causing the lesions on Michael's spine? Is there foreign residual fragmented DNA in his genome that is causing this? If these DNA fragments are integrated into Michael's genome, his own cells could be a spike factory, continuing to make spike protein, which in turn causes his own immune system to attack his own cells.
There is a connection between these vaccines and increased risk of harm. Myocarditis and pericarditis, transverse myelitis, turbo cancer, we're seeing all kinds of tumors form.
In short, there are a few ways that these shots can cause harm. First, the spike protein is toxic. Second, the lipid nanoparticles on their own are toxic. And third, these shots contain foreign DNA that should not be there.
I think that it's important for everyone to understand that this massive global effort to bring vaccines within such a short time does not skip any important steps in terms of testing the vaccines for safety, effectiveness, and quality. So what has happened is normally it takes quite a number of years to develop vaccines. But because there's a massive investment from governments, these vaccines have been brought to bear in a faster time.
Safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. Oh, but by the way, we never did a single test on whether it was safe or effective. One example of that, of not being scientific, is that the original vaccines, the Pfizer-Moderna dyad of vaccines that was tested and that was deemed safe enough, there was no DNA in it. Unfortunately, for 7 billion people, there was tons of DNA in it. They used a second system. They used a second version of the vax because it would have taken them 50 years, 50. It would have taken them 50 years to produce vaccines in the same safe method that they presented to the various health agencies. Look how safe this is. Look how there's no DNA in it. You can count on this. But then the agencies and the governments themselves cooperated with the vaccine manufacturers and said, oh, you really can't put out this product without doing it in a different way? Well, we'll just accept the safety of this first version you gave us, but go ahead, manufacture the heck out of it where there will actually be tons and tons of DNA in it as well. And that's what's happened. Fully 1/3 of the weight of what goes into everyone's shoulder is DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, the hallmark of life. And because that's going into us and has the capability of going right into the nucleus of any number of our cells, it means that elements of DNA, as Dr. Speaker would have told you, elements of DNA are literally going into our spinal cord cells, the various cells that give us our immune toxicities or our immune health. The cells of various types are all being affected. It's just the wrong product. It's a deleterious product. It was always a harmful product. And Michael is simply one unfortunate victim of this deleteriously made, falsified product.
First of all, what's been proposed to people with respect to the RNA vaccines is that the technology has been in development like for 40 years, including like the lipid nanotechnology. And that's true, that the lipid nanoparticles were developed in Canada, largely through the work early on that stemmed from basically at the University of BC. And what happened is Moderna and also Pfizer both licensed the ability to use the lipid nanoparticles. You know, we've known about RNA for pretty close to 70, 80 years. The main application of the RNA in terms of being a therapeutic was more for cancer applications, and it's using what we call antisense RNA. So there's been over 20 years of research looking at antisense RNA as a therapeutic, which is, injected to hopefully get into cancer cells to block cancer proteins. They're not there to create the protein. Well, I think we were very desperate early on to take on this threat, and we thought that vaccination was really the main solution to the problem. Actually, as I've outlined, it probably exacerbated the problem. But we took it on. In the summer of 2020, the Canadian government had negotiations with about 7 different vaccine manufacturers. And then the approvals of those vaccines didn't actually happen until the beginning of December. So we have our government negotiating contracts to purchase these vaccines, and then having our own regulatory agency, Health Canada, go through a review of what would have been only 2 months of testing data in people, then making the decision under interim order in Canada. And what happens is in the interim order in Canada, you actually don't have to demonstrate that the product is safe, nor that it's effective. What they do is, in the way that legislation is written, you have to ascertain that the threat of, in this case, the viral infection and the consequences is greater than what you think the consequences would be of a vaccine. And we think of vaccines in the traditional sense, like I was explaining earlier, that, attenuated viruses. And then they compared that to early data where they were contemplating that the death rate of this SARS-CoV-2 virus, population-wide was, 3% or higher. And of course, as it turns out, that's completely untrue.
Yeah, I have no problem questioning the dangers of the vax now. I mean, I've had 3 full years of information digging and understanding how dangerous they are. So I have no problems discussing it. It was my duty to speak out to the public so that they knew that they weren't getting a free ride with these jabs, that there certainly was risk. And sadly, there was no benefit as well. There was absolutely zero benefit from the vaxes. All they did was make you more likely to get COVID, more likely to get other diseases. And that's all that they did. The Cleveland Clinic study showed with 50,000 staff at the Cleveland hospital system that the sickest staff were the people who'd had 4 and 5 vaxes, like Michael. He had 4 vaxes. The people who had 0 to 1 jab only were the healthiest of the staff. And the healthiest of all were the staff that had 0 vaxes. And so from the end of 22 onwards, I've been able to speak with comfort and with truth that the vaxes harm you in relation to COVID, making you more likely to get COVID, more likely to be in the ICU with COVID itself. And the secondary issues with neurologic things like Michael has, or turbo cancers like many people are getting, these things are the actual results of the jabs.
There are other people with vaccine injuries in Ontario, and I don't think we're being recognized as vaccine injured. There's no category vaccine injured person. There's no way to deal with it. They basically just use the word idiopathic. Idiopathic because they don't want to say the word vaccine injury. because they're afraid of what it will represent and how it will offend the corporations, the medical companies, the pharmaceutical companies that support them.
I got the first shot in April the 30th of 2021. Didn't have any symptoms, major symptoms, but it was my second shot. Immediately after that vaccine, my right leg started getting very sore. And I tried putting ice on it, and I looked down at my leg. It was bruised, roughly between 2 or 3 to 4 inches. My calf was bigger than my left. So I started automatically thinking, it has to be the vaccine that caused the severe pain. I went to the New Westminster Hospital, which they kept me there. Dr. Brown, I think his name is, he came out and he said, sorry to inform you, you have DVT, which is, a thrombosis. I went home, went to bed with a 102 degree temperature, taking blood thinners. I think it was Eliquis at that time. And then my doctor called me, and he was on the phone for about an hour looking at my charts. There was pages and pages of charts of my platelet levels being extremely low, and my blood clots were off the charts. And this was in my calf. So I did another ultrasound, and they had an intern on working me, and then she got her boss, and then she moved the instrument up, and she said, Mr. Becker, I'm sorry to tell you, your blood clots are right up to your hip. But Dean, if I get any more blood clots moving up, it's not rocket science. If they hit my organs, my heart, I can be in a lot of trouble.
Last days of December 21st, he had last shot, which was Moderna, before 2 Pfizers. First week, in January 22nd, I started to notice all these symptoms. The first was like disorientation, memory loss, then, tremor appeared, then stiffness, then problem with swallowing, immobility. He was bedridden. All the doctors were astonished how fast all the symptoms developed. I was told that his compromised immune system attacked his nervous system. I'm sorry. So my husband died after the complications. And when I asked all the doctors, would you please tell me, they were the top doctors, I asked them, how do you think from your experience, big experience, if this vaccination could be a trigger for all these complications which happen so fast? And all of them said, yes, it could be a trigger. When I asked for the little note just to have these words on the paper, I did not get.
We're going to make sure that people who choose not to get vaccinated don't get on a plane or a train, don't get to work in the public service, don't get by working with the provinces on vaccine certifications and mandates, don't get to go to movie theaters or gyms or restaurants and other non-essential services.
We pretty well had a gun to our head. I just happened to be one of the unfortunate ones in the small minority that had actually the spike proteins, the mRNA COVID vaccine that's supposed to mix with your cells, apparently, I'm not a scientist, to build up your immune system. They didn't help me. As a matter of fact, they hurt me.
We were forced to do this vaccination in spite of my warnings to all medical staff about previous life-threatening reaction of my husband. I'm sorry, on the previous pneumonia vaccine few years before. And he had very severe reaction, life-threatening reaction. I mentioned this to all medical staff before doing this vaccination. No one paid attention on my words.
October 9th. In 4 more days, it'll be 2 years since I took the COVID vaccine. And right now, it's pretty grim, my life. I mean, I'm still fighting. I'm still trying to be cheerful as I can. I don't want to kill myself. But I can't walk. My hands barely open. After my stay at Hamilton General Hospital, I was sent back to Norfolk General Hospital. They repatriated me to a community hospital which didn't have a neurologist or an MRI machine. And they left me there until that hospital decided that I had no more medical conditions. I have no medical conditions that they can deal with, yeah. And they shipped me off to long-term care. It feels like I've been put out to pasture. It feels like I've been left here to die. The problem with my situation is that because of the vaccine being the instigator of my condition, there's no way to identify spike proteins in my body. There are no tests currently available in Canada that can identify the spike protein. And as a result, the neurologists are like, oh, it's idiopathic. Well, the reason it's idiopathic is because they're idiots. I have a spike protein infection. It's not detectable by the lumbar punctures they've done, the spinal taps. All the blood tests they've done have shown up nothing to be able to identify the viral agent that caused this. You know, and they can't identify it because the Ontario government hasn't decided to actually implement the test.
It's not right. I mean, Michael is being denied tests, and there are treatments that Michael believes may help him, and yet the Ontario health system allows him to lay in bed with absolutely no recourse. It's wrong. If Michael believes that there's a treatment that might help him, if there is actually data and there's research out there that these tests, that these procedures might help him, then my goodness, why aren't we doing them?
Powerful statement for sure. Why aren't we doing them, Dean? Why? And I think a lot of people ask that question. And by the way, I would add on, why are we still jabbing children? You know what I mean? In some of our provinces, why are we still jabbing babies when we know what we know, the information we have? They're going to lock the files, you know, for the next 15 years. You can't get any access to the vaccine injured files from the government. This whole thing's a sham. You know, a lot of people handle it well. I am not the person that handles this well. I get very angry, and that's why I got to go to the verse, you know, the earth and everything in it. That thing calms me down because it helps me realize, okay, these people are not going to get away with anything. Every conversation that was had on the phone, every secret meeting, every secret Zoom call, the little whispering going on behind the curtain before they came on the camera and, you know, told us, you know, it's safe and effective, and all the lies that they told us. I want justice for people like Michael as well, Dean, and it just makes me angry. And that's why that verse at the beginning of our show, it kind of calms me down. It's like, okay, God's in control. He sees all, he hears all, he knows all. It's going to be okay. The truth is going to come out. It's coming out now. You did the documentary. It's coming out. People, obviously, their eyes are being opened. People are a lot smarter they are today than they were 4 or 5 years ago when we were going through all this. How does this make you feel, Dean, as you're going through his story and this part of it? And we're seeing all the other people injured. Things are popping up. You know, this is back when, like, you know, people were passing away and the embalmers were saying, hey, we're seeing all these clots and these weird things are coming out of these bodies we've never seen before. How did this make you feel when you were going through it?
Well, you have good days, you have bad days. You have good days where you think, I can fight this, I can go. And then you have some days where it's just like, am I making a dent? Am I getting the truth out there? Because the evidence is stacking up. The people are coming out. And yet we're being told you're crazy. You're wrong. No, stop it. Get out of here. You know, you're nuts. And so you just wonder, wow, what's going on here that we can't? I mean, I thought we would do a debrief on the biggest thing that ever happened to our civilization in 100 years. And there's been nothing. It's just crickets. So, you know, some days you got the fight, and then some days you just got down. You got to lean on your verse like that. Yeah, agreed. Alan, your thoughts?
Well, ultimately, God does have the final say. because the scripture talks about there is a day appointed for us to die, and after that, the judgment. So everybody is not going to get away with it. They might seem to get away from it here on earth, but when they stand before God, they will be judged of how they handled the stewardship that they were given by God to handle. And there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be calling out for mercy when it's going to be too late for mercy.
Yeah. Just apologize. Just come out and say, we're sorry. You know, we made some mistakes, you know, along the way. Just apologize. We're not even going to get that. Dean, before you go, and by the way, we're going to have back tomorrow to do the final episode, part 4. Where can people find the full film that they can share with their friends and support it?
Yeah, you can go to raineymedia.com, and up on the top menu, you can click on Why Can't We Talk About This? And yes, please share the film. Maybe people who agree with you, but definitely try to get in front of people who don't agree with you on this. We've got to get this out there. And I think this story is just, it's kind of, it's not very strong. It's certainly not biased, I don't think. I think it's just a good starting place on this issue.
Yep. All right, Dean, appreciate you. We'll definitely have you back tomorrow. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I'm grateful for Dean telling the story. So people need to see it. You know what I mean? They need to see it because Michael is there. He's suffering. And I think the least we could do is hear his story, hear him out, right?
We need to pray for Michael and others that are suffering because of the vaccine shot. And we need to pray that God will continue to give them courage, that God will continue to be with them, that they'll sense his presence with them so that they can be comforted during this time. God has not abandoned them, even though, this is a very difficult road that God has asked them to take. But we just need to pray, and of course God can heal as well, and does. So let's just pray.
We're giving away our free book at Living in Truth. It's yours absolutely free. It's a devotional study on 1 Peter chapter 1 and 2. Great gold in here. It talks about how we're chosen. And I think it's a good resource for people to pick up, read, and do the reflection questions. It's absolutely free. Go to our website, gotalktruth.com, click on resources, fill out the form. We'll send one to you in the mail absolutely free. You want to help support our mission, keep this conversation in truth on the air. When the lamestream media completely ignores it, we'd love to partner with you. You can go to our website, gotalktruth.com/donate. Many different ways to give digitally. We also don't take government funds or special interest groups. It's just because of the generosity of those that watch this show that we're able to continue. If you'd like to do it through the mail, you can. We'd love to get your letters. You can send it to Talk Truth at 246 Stewart Green Southwest, Suite 3260, Calgary, Alberta, T3H3C8. All right, Dad, we're out of time. We'll see you guys later.
Love you.